Hey, this is Deborah Atkinson. You're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top struggles and concerns, really hope to inspire you. I share what to eat, how to move, and how to change your mindset, often about what you eat and how you move, so that you can have the energy and the vitality that you want, need, and deserve in this second and better half. And today, I'm really going to let you listen to a little rant. So, this is a topic that is not brand new, but there are so many places where I go live or I share a tip, and often will share them with my email subscribers and sometimes share content with my email subscribers. I don't share with anyone else. But if you're not at all those places, you haven't gotten this message yet, or bigger picture, you have gotten this message, but not enough times because it's relatively new to you and you've been conditioned for 30 or 40 years to think a different way. It's really necessary that we go over it again. So, you're going to hear me describe moderate exercise and maybe attack. That may be a strong word, but attack the whole theory of that. And I'll take you back to the beginning of the pandemic when we were all concerned about immunity. And oh my gosh, are we going to get it? And there's no real solution. How do we protect ourselves? And I talked a lot about the kind of exercise you do want to be doing if your goal is to boost immunity, therefore, hormone balance, and what you don't want to be doing. And for a lot of people, it was new information and confusing. So, if that was one time you listened, you heard it, this will be another time. And maybe somewhere between March of 2020 and now, you've heard it more times. And, today we get so much information. The theory is we used to need to hear something 7 times if it was new to us to really be able to adapt it or adopt it as our own thinking, or adapt it as this is the way we're going to change and do things. Now that number is something like 27 because there's so much else coming in, it kind of washes it out. So, whatever this is for you, maybe it's confirmation of something that you knew, but still, again, needed to hear it that yes, this is the right path for you. And what I would really recommend that you do is look at if you're committed to a certain way, because I've always thought that, always done that, challenge your own thought process by looking at what results you're getting. How do you feel? Is everything in alignment with what you want? Those are the breadcrumbs that you're doing the right thing. So I'm suggesting that you take a look at how's your sleep? How's your energy? How's your appetite, your cravings? How's your digestion? Is there gas? Is there bloating? How's your elimination? Is there constipation? Is there diarrhea? Is it vacillating between the two? How's your concentration, your focus? And all of those things really suggest what's happening with your hormone balance and tells you somewhat, if you're an exerciser, where you are with regard to doing the right exercise to support you. Now, there are lots of other factors and lots of other habits that I talk about in You Still Got It, Girl, the book, from sleep to stress to your exercise, but also your exercise recovery or lack thereof. And two, of course, your nutrition specific to exercise and just around the clock. And then it's pulling all those things together in the hormone balance. There's a chapter in that book on each of them. And it's a great place to start if you're still relatively new. And some of this is feeling like somebody moved the cheese and the old rules just are not going to work anymore. That'll help. So, today, listen to me describe moderate exercise in a way that hopefully you can get a handle on levels of exercise and movement that you want in your day and in your week, and in what proportions they make the most sense. So, Here we go. Let's dive in. In a recent podcast episode, I shared information about how you might want to do a check in on whether or not you're eating enough. So, you might be eating too little to actually lose weight, which in turn slows your metabolism, shuts your body down. It just says, okay, well, I'm going to burn less, and tends to make you tired and groggy. But after the aftermath. So, first of all, huge apology. There were a couple of errors in the worksheet that was given. There was one error actually stated in the video or the audio, and I didn't go back and correct it because re recording the entire episode and going through production again would have taken so much time, and it was kind of a crucial piece of information. So, what we did is chose to correct the podcast show notes and wherever it was placed on the iTunes entry and the YouTube post. Also, we changed those. The worksheet also was changed, but going through it, unless you're one of our Flipping 50 members, we actually went through the calculations live together. This question kept coming up. And it was, well, there's low intensity days and there's high intensity days, but what about, if I'm doing a 30-minute strength training session? And, someone was likening that to potentially being moderate exercise. But here's the thing. If you strength train, ideally you're never doing it unless you're going to muscle fatigue. That makes it a high intensity endeavor. It doesn't have to be long endurance to be high intensity. You either are getting too breathless in your interval training or you're getting too muscular fatigue in your strength training. That deems something high intensity interval training. So keep in mind what is and what isn't high intensity. But today is all about why moderate exercise is not something that you desire. So there wasn't an omission in that episode, and I'll link to that episode, by the way, in the show notes. It wasn't that I left out where's the energy that we need to take in for moderate exercise. It's that I don't want you doing moderate exercise. We're already good at that. Women already use fat for fuel more than men do. And we're pretty good at endurance. What we need, though, now in midlife is more the extremes. We need high intensity interval training, high intensity strength training to take that opportunity to optimize our hormones. And we need low intensity exercise, lots more movement, but not of that steady state kind that we've been so conditioned for doing for decades. That will help decrease your cortisol levels, increase serotonin production, and somewhat your endorphins will benefit from that. Dopamine a little bit, but for women, serotonin is really the key. So let me explain this whole idea. The mistake with moderate exercise, and you're still, for probably decades to come, going to hear moderate exercise, maybe from your doctor even, or the American Heart Association. And I want you to realize this. It's very hard to change governmental guidelines. It takes decades for real research that's been published in real peer-reviewed journals to get put into textbooks, to get put and used in government guidelines. It's very slow. So realize that if you really want the science, you've got to do some digging and look at people who are digging, if not you. Moderate amounts of high and of low intensity exercise versus moderate middle of the intensity pyramid is what you want. It's important you distinguish between the two. I first started talking about this a little bit more in March of 2020 when we were all brand new and fresh into, oh my gosh, this is a pandemic. What do we do to boost our immune system? And your immune system and your hormones are intertwined significantly. So what is good for your immunity is good for your hormones. What's good for your hormones is going to be good for your immunity. So same thing. Moderate exercise actually does not help your hormones, doesn't really help your immune system as much as either the low kind that reduces cortisol levels or the high that also uses less cortisol and has a corresponding decrease in cortisol levels later and after it, and also improves your growth hormone, testosterone levels, and takes up the slack from where estrogen levels that have declined left off. Okay, so let's explain a 5-zone pyramid. So if you can imagine an equilateral triangle, and I know geography has been a minute ago, but an equilateral triangle is even on each side. So it sits on its base, right? And comes up to literally like an Egyptian pyramid. Imagine that, and imagine that we drew 4 lines through it horizontally to divide it into 5 different stripes. Okay? Still with me? On the bottom is zone 1. Then zone 2, and at the very top is zone 5, the little tip of the pyramid. All right, so obviously less of zone 5. So on zone 1, what is all that? That is your daily activities of life. That is walking from one end of your house to the other, or maybe from the bottom to the top of your house, up and down stairs, down hallways, walking if you walk outdoors, it's gardening, it's picking up the laundry, going up and down stairs, folding clothes, making beds, vacuuming, cleaning. It's just living, period. So it's zone 1. That's definitely more calorie burning, more activity than if you were sitting on the couch or lying in your bed. All right. But obviously, you're probably not breathing hard. So you might be walking your dog if you have a tiny dog, right? But it's not walking St. Bernard or an old English sheepdog for that matter. You're just doing the life, okay? Zone 2, let's climb up the ladder a little bit. That's your endurance. It's kind of your steady state, but it's your all-day pace. So it's when you elevate your heart rate, when you're doing that, for the first few minutes, you're breathing a little bit harder than you were because you're waiting for that oxygen delivery to catch up. There's a little deficit as you start working harder because the oxygen isn't there immediately. It has to catch up while you start breathing harder. Your heart pumps a little faster. Then, get really comfortable probably around 10 minutes in, and you can settle in and kind of stay there. Your body can easily produce oxygen while you're doing it, so you don't get breathless while you're there. You could talk, have a good conversation with somebody, and talk pretty normally, really. So that might be going for a bike ride, and you could ride for hours if you have the food and the water to do it. You can go for a hike, and it's not that steep that you can't just keep going for hours if you wanted to. You might go for an easy jog or a swim if you're used to that. Now, if you're new to jogging, that's not going to have the same effect. Likewise, if you're not skilled at swimming, it's not going to have that effect on you either. So this is where things begin to go wrong. However, for those who think it's always better to push, I want to push, right? They won't get the foundational fitness benefit from doing zone 2 work because they let it drift to zone 3. Let's talk about it. Zone 3 is for the kind of distance training that might be associated with doing half marathons or even 10Ks in those with less experience. Few of us need zone 3, however. So with cardiac drift, what you're doing is just you're probably in a zone 2, but you've let yourself exercise long enough that we begin sweating, we lose water, we're a little dehydrated, your heart rate begins to climb if you allow it to. So often to do a zone 2 workout, you start at one speed, but you will have to slow down in order to stay in zone 2. And when you're training for endurance events, really that's what you should be doing, not just allowing your heart rate to keep creeping. Because if you're doing that long zone 2 work, you actually are teaching your body to use more fat for fuel. But if you just allow it to creep up, you won't be having the same effect. So that cardiac drift, when the heart rate goes up, if it's not monitored and observed, an easy recovery activity, then easily becomes zone 3 when it wasn't supposed to have been. For most, especially for women in midlife, what I call this is the no benefits zone, because you're actually letting your cortisol creep up as you continue it. And it can be because the intensity comes up, or it can be because you let the duration extend beyond 60 minutes, definitely beyond 75. It's pretty proven. But if you're newer to exercise, not exercising regularly, you're going to experience that creep happening at about 60 minutes. That's where cortisol just continues to go up and it won't come down after exercise. Okay. Zone 4. This is where you're getting out of your comfort zone training. I mean, this is breathlessness. This is where you do intervals. You do the high intensity here. You'll then go back down to zone 1, not zone 2, zone 1, to really fully recover in the recovery intervals. Zone 5, that's what's tolerated for a very short amount of times, maybe contributes to 5%, maybe even just 3% of your total exercise time any given week. It's not likely to be sustained beyond 30 seconds, if even that, because the availability of oxygen and fuel is so minimal, and the ability of your body to access oxygen is just long past. You can't. So with brief recovery, you can attain this one again. However, this is like the sprint to a finish line when you give all that you have, but you cross that line and you're like hands to the knees, or you fall on the ground, or we've seen it, right, at the Olympics and other events. I'm sure you've seen somebody do that. So zone 5, zone 4, and 5, we need to reach those. We need that, but we do just small amounts of it regularly. So a couple times a week doing your interval training, or for a couple of minutes, maybe at the end of a walk or a jog a couple times a week. That will be very beneficial to you. And then spending a lot of time in your zone 1, moving, being an active person, but not necessarily being someone who does that steady state. Get your heart rate up, keep moving, read a magazine or a book while you're exercising. That is not really beneficial to you at all. So you either want to work hard or you want to just do a recovery day. And those are the two best kinds of quote unquote cardio workouts that you can do. And I say quote unquote because when we get to those high intensities of zone 4, zone 5, it's actually not cardiovascular like we say aerobic, because it's anaerobic work. The oxygen can't get there. We can just deliver enough to fire it and get it going, and then we're going to need to recover again. But that's what you want. You want to reach fatigue or breathlessness and then back out of it. So think of that equilateral triangle again in your head. Think of coloring in the bottom zone 1, the second zone 2, the top zone 5 and zone 4, and leave zone 3 out. Leave it white, leave it clear, and leave it out of your workout. And you will get far better fitness by doing so. Okay, I'm going to leave you with that to think about, and whether or not you might be allowing your heart rate to creep into that zone 3 and spending too much time in a place where it's not actually helping your cause. You can find the show notes for this shorty at flipping50.com/moderate exercise mistake. And what are you waiting for? Let's start flipping 50 today.